answer that with categorical yes. I've informed the president of my intention, but I've not informed the Nigerians yet. I'm still consulting. And I have no problem consulting, and I've not set a parameter of limitation to the extent of how many people will I consult. You will soon hear, all you want to hear is a category.
Well, Nigerians will have yet another opportunity to elect a new president in 2023, and some names are coming up in the political discourse as interested presidential aspirants. Well, just some hours ago, the national leader, as you watched earlier, of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu, informed the president of his presidential ambition. Also, a former secretary to the government of the Federation, Ayim Pius Ayim, threw his heart into the ring. Others like Yahaya Bello, the governor of Kogi State, also made the rounds. Amid all these, many questions are still being asked after 7 years of the Muhammadu Buhari administration, from economic challenges, security upheavals, to an unimpressive growth of human capital development. Well, rising foreign debts, increasing budgets with no improvement of lives in the country have affected and also attracted criticisms. And the president, in reaction, has appointed his first chief economic advisor. But it took 7 years, rather than late than never or too late to save. Welcome to VSA. I'm Sulaiman. Well, at Nigeria's seat of power, new developments are being announced. The latest of such is the appointment of a chief economic advisor, Doyin Salami, to advise the president on issues concerning Nigeria's economy. To many Nigerians, this has come too late. The economy is gasping for breath. Foreign debts are on the increase, earnings are suffering a dip. There is a deepening macroeconomic instability, dwindling household incomes and remittances, youth unemployment, and increasing cost of production. Now, the business environment is volatile. Foreign investments are reduced, no thanks to insecurity and unwelcoming government policies. For a section of Nigerians, it's better late than never. The president may still turn things around for the better in his last year and more. A realist point of view or an optimist? As I say, time will reveal. In arguably Nigeria's most resource-rich region, that's the Niger-Delta, there is an improvement in the security of lives, but the oil pipelines are getting damaged by thefts, and the cleanup is on recess. Who's the owner of this oil? That's the question that stirred a hot debate between two of Nigeria's oldest statesmen and politicians. Well, joining me to unpack all of this, I have Professor Pat Utomi, who's a professor of political economy, and Annkio Briggs, civil rights advocate and convener, Niger-Delta Self-Determination Movement. Well, thank you for your time, Professor Utomi and Annkio Briggs. Now, let's quickly start by the breaking story in Nigeria. That's more like the freshest out of the political space in Nigeria. Let's start with you, Professor Utomi. You're not new in things like this. What's your initial reaction to Tinubu's ambition to run, and have you been impressed with the other names being linked to the Nigerian presidency?
Well, first of all, you know, everybody has a right in a democracy.
I can't hear you, Professor Utomi. Maybe you have to unmute yourself.
I am on mute from here. It's probably your studio. Can you hear me now?
I'm sorry, I still can't hear you.
I'm not sure what it is, but
look, I can hear you now. At last.
I don't know what to say because I don't see.
You've gone off again. It's on mute again, I guess.
Yeah, I was on mute before, then I, came back. Am I on now?
Yeah, you're on now.
Can I hear me? Okay, thank you very much. The beauty of democracy is that everyone is entitled to having an aspiration, and that is good. Where there is rational public conversation and the people are truly interviewed, since they're applying for a job, they are interviewed by their prospective hirers, the people. When they are properly interviewed, their suitability for the job will be known. I don't think that it is big news that Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu might be aspiring to the presidency. I think what matters is how he responds to the job interview during the course of the next couple of weeks. I am personally inclined to a process that pays very little heed to professional politicians. Nigeria has suffered a great deal because of the deals that professional politicians make so that they will stay close to power. What has happened is that that process has resulted in the pursuit of power being primarily for the purpose of state capture, and state capture for the advance of the individual needs and interests of those who capture the Nigerian state. I give example all the time of South Africa, where I have a fairly considerable experience having served on boards of South African companies for several years. That one of the most problematic and challenging issues in South Africa that's being discussed is the problem of state capture. The South Africans set up the Zondo Commission on that count. And as you know, the immediate past president of South Africa has ended up in jail on account of that process. When South African executives lament state capture, I look at the state of state capture in South Africa and I kind of laugh. I say to them, if you come to Nigeria, you'll understand the meaning of state capture. The Nigerian state has been captured in a way that has prevented progress in Nigeria, because the average professional politician in Nigeria is completely focused on how to use the capture of the state to pay off his debts, both financial and moral and whatever name you call those kinds of social debts. And the Nigerian people end up the biggest losers. Now, if somebody runs for public office and spends 300 billion naira to get it, imagine how much the Nigerian people will suffer or pay for that person to eventually get a return on his investment. And this is a role that INEC has to play. It has been very poor, very incompetent, very ineffectual in this role. The South Korean Electoral Commission is the example I often give. When he found that South Korea was suffering so much from the role of the big men of politics, the role of the godfathers and bank rollers, he decided that the only way through in South Korean politics will be debates. Debates on the streets, debates in college halls, debates on television, and all of those. So you're running for office, you go to like 12 or more debates in the process. It's very easy that when the people who are interviewing you see you in debates, they will tell whether you are prepared for the job, they will tell what your motives are, and they will make a choice. I am absolutely convinced that the 1993 elections went the way they went in Nigeria because of the debate between Chief Abiola and Alhaji Tofa. I mean, people watching that debate decided, wait a minute, I think we'd better trust our faith more in this person than that person. Even in the recent Anambra elections, we could see the effect of the debate that took place. But what we have done in Nigerian politics is that we have run away from that kind of way of interviewing prospects by the people who think they have a capture of machinery of the state, staying away from debates. And the consequence, Nigerians have hired people who really don't have much of a clue as to how to solve the Nigerian problem. So we must pressure the system to do good by the Nigerian people. The naked truth is that most of the professional politicians believe that their chances exist because they expect that they can buy the machinery of the process.
I'd like to jump in there. Sorry to cut you there. Apologies, Professor Utomi. I'd like to jump in there. I hope you don't lose your train of thoughts. Let's welcome Annkio Briggs. Listening to you, I'm excited that you're here because trying to get yourself and Professor for this particular, start of this journey towards 2023, it was instructive that we must bring in a woman who's spoken openly. And I think Professor Utomi was right there when you spoke years ago, Annkio Briggs. You said to the world that you had the chance of actually pitching your citizenship, with another country, but you chose Nigeria because your father is a Nigerian. Now, tell us, looking at how things are panning out, listening to some of the key things Professor Utomi has raised, talking about recruitment process, how we can bring in people to steer the affairs of state. Would you say in the last 8 years, now that this administration is winding down, you're excited at what you're saying so far?
If we're looking, good evening, Prof, and Happy New Year, and you also. Quite honestly, as you quite rightly know, we go quite a long way back in terms of discussing Nigeria, almost 2 decades now. And looking at what we have today, first of all, if we're looking at the rotation, let's go back to the basics, which is what most people argue about back this way, and also at the grassroots level, at the level of the electorate. Now, if we are looking at North and South rotation, whether Northerners are the best leaders or turn out to be the best presidents, or the Southerners turn out to be the best president, is not the issue right now. The issue is, it is an agreed, a gentleman's understanding across the North and the South that at some point, if a Northerner is in presidential power, then a Southerner is the vice president. And if a Christian is the president or the vice president, then it is the other way around. Because look, we cannot run away from the areas that are bringing these problems. And the areas that are bringing the problems is that we are different people that make up Nigeria. And let's not pretend, well, like I keep saying, I won't pretend that sentiments of who you are, whether you're from Isoko, Urobo, or Igbira, or whatever you are, that is who you are. And so to pretend that somehow by some magical understanding that that doesn't matter is untrue. Now, if we have a situation where Buhari is going to finish his 8 years of second tenure in 2023, and there is going to be an election, I mean, I find it unacceptable that anybody can contemplate that for some weird reason that the whole of the South, the Southeast, the South-South, and the Southwest are incapable of finding one person that is going to be better than this president that we are under right now. That's one. Two, if we remember, Obasanjo has done 8 years under southern Nigeria, and he's from the Southwest. Jonathan has done 4 years of elected office and 1 year of finishing of Yar'Adua's tenure, which he was not elected for as president, but elected along with Yar'Adua, and therefore by the constitution as it stands today, had to step in when unfortunately we lost Yar'Adua to illness. Now, having said that, he has governed for 5 years. Now, in my personal opinion, and I have convinced a lot of my people that it is not the presidency that we're interested in. We were not interested in the presidency before Obasanjo picked Jonathan and made him the vice presidential candidate. He was not the preferred candidate at that time. Obasanjo, again, was the person that mixed it all up. That's all history and it's factual. Now, Jonathan, having emerged as a substantive president and then an elective president, now accepted that he lost an election after the 2015 election. And we all can remember how it led up to where Jonathan lost election. Now, Buhari has governed and is going to give up power in 2023. I have a very sickening feeling, and I have said so openly, I do not believe that the North or the cabal that constitutes the political cabal, that constitutes the interest of politics in the North, is prepared to give up power. That is one. Then two, going back to the Southwest, if Obasanjo has governed for 8 years and is come back to the South under Jonathan, that's why I mentioned Jonathan, and we have done 5 years, I personally believe that as South person, Niger-Delta, we should not be interested in the presidential, aspiring for presidential seat this time round. And therefore, for justice and equity, if it comes to the South, and it should, and it must come to the South, if we're talking about equity and justice in Nigeria, then it should go to the Southeast as far as I'm concerned. Now, people, what I want to say here is that it's up to the Southeast to be able to negotiate politically between their friends, if you like, in the southern Nigeria, that is the Niger-Delta and the Southwest, to see it that it must go to the Southeast. And then as politicians, they can negotiate with the North and accept that it is coming to the Southeast. Now, the North has no right to decide who it will go to in the Southeast or even in the South.
Let me jump in here and bring in Professor Utomi to help us also, make sense of some of the key things here. The other word I still very much remember is that word lobbying. Some of the key things Annkio Briggs mentioned here, for instance, the southeastern Nigerian can actually talk to other regions and say, we're lobbying you, see how you can come in on this. Now, make sense of some of the key things she's raised. She's now talking about rotation. We were going to get in there, but she's been able to bring it earlier, and it's something I don't want us to run away from now. She's talking about permutations, talking about rotation, and of course, these are deeply rooted in what they call politics, Professor Utomi.
Yeah, I generally agree with Annkio on most things. In the basic framework of what she has said, I don't disagree at all. But I want us as a country to begin to move forward from these traditional political permutations, which essentially just leave a group of people who are trading our future around permutations. I think that Nigerians must begin to engage who they want to hire and find out if they are suitable for the job they want to get done. Inclusion is very critical, and the essence of inclusion incorporates just about everything that she has said. See, the idea of representative democracy, which essentially has resulted in affirmative action in the United States and elsewhere around the world, came out of work done in the 1940s and published in a book by a gentleman called Thomas Kingsley, 1948. And now inclusion is high currency globally. So including is critical, but we will not, for the sake of inclusion, hire some dummy because he comes from a particular part of the country. That would be disaster for our business. If it were a private company, same thing for government. But the general principle is that the best person from an area that needs to be included be hired. And like I stated in my starting out, I have now come to a conclusion that carrying on with professional politicians can only bring doom to Nigeria. I think that at this point in time, we must say to ourselves, all these people should go and find a job and do. Let Nigerians who are volunteering themselves from the hard work they are doing, serving as lawyers, being businessmen, being whatever they do, and want to sacrifice to come and play some role in guiding our direction forward. Let those people become available. And the biggest problem in this process is that the politicians have stolen from the Nigerian state and are using what they have stolen to try and carry on this state capture. The Nigerian people, the Electoral Commission, must find a way of ending money politics. In fact, we shouldn't necessarily be going back to people who say, I want this job so much. We should find people who we think can do the job and say to them, hey, come and serve us. This is where Nigeria must be at this point in time. And we can find those people everywhere.
You know, before I get to go back to Annkio Briggs, I want to stay with you for a bit here. You said Nigerians should start engaging these people that they want to hire. And perhaps maybe many Nigerians have are not following developments in South Africa, talking about the Justice Zondo Commission, which you highlighted earlier on, talking about the state capture. Perhaps we should start talking about, you know, the practicability of some of these key things. How can the Nigerian people, you know, engage these people, the genuine ones, knowing full well that there are those who have actually, as you said, taken from the state and using such powers, whether financial or otherwise political, to oppress the people and also scuttle the process. You talked about debate earlier on. We've seen people who blatantly say to us, I will not debate.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, they go on to win the election.
This is because they've captured the machinery of the state. And as you know, let's be very frank and honest to ourselves, elections in Nigeria are a complete farce. But there is some method to the madness. So what we must do is disrupt this method of the madness. I give an example, and I like to provide very factual information in these matters. We can offer opinion. Opinions are useful, but facts. Shortly after the last election, I was at a reception at the home of the British Deputy High Commission in Lagos. And there were lots of people milling around. Right behind me, not a group I was part of conversation, a gentleman, and I'm naming names so that it's clear, a gentleman who was Director General of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Oscar Onyema, was chatting with some senior diplomats, and one of the senior diplomats from one of the big powers basically described 2019 election as a farce. And Oscar said to him, hey, but you people said it was okay. And the man said to him, are we the people to tell you that you are making a mess of yourselves? It's just a simple thing. We recently saw on television everywhere a ranking of police forces in the world. Nigeria was the bottom, the worst police force in the world. If you ask the senior diplomat in public what he thinks of the Nigerian police force, what do you think he will say to you? You are the worst in the world? No, he will use polite language. And if you are not smart, you will go away thinking, hey, we have a great police force. The British and the Japanese say to us, that our police force is okay. So we must really, as they say in my language, use our tongue now to count our teeth. The truth of the matter is that the Nigerian state is not making progress because we do not have a democracy. We don't have elections that people take seriously. This is delegitimating of the state. The electoral process is what legitimizes succession to power, and it is fundamentally weak. INEC is a major culprit. The security forces are major culprits in the process. So people who ostensibly emerge from elections. So the question is, what's the method to the madness, and how can that be disrupted? First of all, if you just take a simple example, Lagos, where you live, Sulaiman, the last elections that brought in the governor, just barely 1 million people ostensibly voted. If you calculate that, it includes the manufactured votes, it includes the ones that were bought, it includes the ones that genuinely voted, it includes the ones that were manipulated. You put all of this together and still not more than 1 million people voted for the governor of Lagos, a state that says it has 20-something million people, possibly on the basis of those statistics, probably 17 million, because a young population, 17 million people who are eligible to vote. And then you split that between those who voted for the incumbent and those who voted for the competition. You will find that probably less than 400,000 people vote for the person who becomes governor of Lagos. Imagine that Nigerian people were to wake up, and the reason they've not woken up is, first of all, they don't think their votes count, so they don't bother, so they just ignore the process. Imagine that we're to assure them that their votes will count. Imagine that we're to tell them that security is not going to be an issue because they are afraid to come out on that election day.
You know,
and they could use their telephone to vote from their...
I'm not going to run away from this method because you'll still come back and talk to us more on this method. But I don't want to lose, because this is where Annkio Briggs also come in. You know, there was a time when civil society was really, really impactful in Nigeria. And listening to some of the key things Professor Utomi is saying, talking about the method, talking about, you know, speaking to the people relied heavily on people like yourself and others. What exactly is happening, especially now that the people are looking towards another election, vis-a-vis some of the key things he's also highlighted about the region? He doesn't think that rotational is the future for us as a people.
With the rotation thing, so that I can put that to rest, and then
yes,
I'll come
quickly.
back to
Yes, we come back to yes.
Civil society. See, you see, in Nigeria, we definitely have to address the issue of one group feeling had done by over another group or by another group. We can't today, when we're talking about the injustice of the possibility that another northern, perhaps a Fulani, perhaps a Muslim, is going to emerge, or that it can be accepted, that it is possible to consider that. And now say because we cannot, nobody is asking for us to vote for a fisherman that has never left his fishing port just because we want it to go to the south, or a farmer in Abeokuta to leave his farm, you know, though it's been done before. But the point is that we have to have, and I said when I made this point, that it is up to the Igbos to present to us their best. They must present to us their best. I'm definitely going with that notion that one, it should go to the southeast, and that two, the southeast owes people like me, the southwest and the south, and even the rest of the north, to bring the best, so that when they actually do bring somebody, they can beat their chest and say, we brought somebody that is better than anybody else you have seen. So I definitely then do not agree that this is the time to begin to say we should not do rotational. Because if we're going by that, I have mentioned the Southeast. Now you look at somebody like Aledeh Tinubu. Now Tinubu was in APC that promised us a lot. They promised Nigerians a lot, whether we want to discuss it or not, or mention their names or not. That's the truth. And yet here is somebody.
No, by all means, Ms. Briggs, by all means, you can name names so long as we're within the confines of the law.
Somebody that has failed on the campaign promises, such a prominent person of the APC that was in the forefront of making sure that, according to them, that Jonathan was the worst president and that they must remove him by all and any means necessary. And today we remember, and you remember, my brother, because I was in your interviews as well, about the issue of subsidy removal. Now, the subsidy we were removing at that time that brought the country to a standstill and so demonized Jonathan. Today, that same subsidy is worse and far higher than what it was in Jonathan's time. So these are the comparisons that I am making. Now, going back to civil society, which is really the key question, I remember in 1998, before Abacha died, even when Ken Sarawiwa was killed, if we remember, civil society was in the forefront. Civil society pushed, and Pat would remind me or correct me, civil society was in the forefront of the fight to even remove Babangida. Civil society was in the forefront of being with Nadeko to make sure that Abiola got the votes that he got, and that unfortunately we know what happened. Therefore, civil society was a key player. I blame civil society because when Abacha died and Abdul Salami came on board, now civil society, the people like, well, they know them, let me not mention them, but I know a lot of them are my friends, some I've lost some of them, but the reality is that they stepped back. And nature abhors vacuum. You fought for this thing. You were within the right age group. You had the qualifications. There were lawyers, there were judges, there were economists like Pat and so many others. Now, civil society stepped back. I would say civil society stepped back because it was at that time that I came back home to join civil society and to join the activities in the Niger-Delta. Then Abacha died. We all know the story of how Ijaw people went to Abuja, saw what was happening, and then the Ijaw agitation started, and the armed insurgents and all agitators started and all of that. So civil society must take some of the blame and even be regretful that they allowed the same people they removed to come back in. How do you remove Abdul Salami? How do you remove Babangida? And then you come and bring Obasanjo out. It's no different from them. Just because he removed his khaki and just because they put him in jail, you now bring him and tell us that he's won election when he couldn't even win in his state or in his local government or whatever the case is. And so the thing has come full circle, and civil society must play a role, even in bringing Buhari's government today. Civil society must take responsibility because part of us was in that movement that brought Buhari back. And a lot of them, to be fair to them, have also seen and regretted that action. So like my late leader, Masha Hari, said during the activities of the River State issues, he said it was an error, a mistake of the heart and not of the head. You know, so I think that is what happened to civil society. So right now, civil society must come back, whether they like it or not, into the fray. And anybody that is not a good civil society person must not be allowed to partake and or be part of that process, so that at least we're able to speak with the people, not for the people, not for the people, with the people. We have to listen to the people. We have to listen to the grassroots. People are suffering. People are dying. So many things have emerged since 2015. that is destroyed this country, not even destroyed. Look, this country is destroyed. If we get it back, it will be that some of us have decided that we must get it back.
I think speaking, sorry to cut you there, speaking as an African and as a Nigerian, sorry to butt in there, I think listening to you, Professor Utomi, I'll need your thought on this. It looks like Nigerians and Africans should be having a movement like getting our country back. But quickly, listen to Annkio Briggs. Some of the key things she raised, help us here. Is it deliberate that governments over time decided to, shut down, for instance, the NOA, National Orientation Agency? There's no one speaking to the people. There's no orientation, reorientation. Even when COVID came, people are unaware of what exactly is happening. Speak to us on this, Professor Utomi, and quickly go back to the method.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, I agree completely with everything Annkio has said. And I was part of that civil society. I mean, in many ways, I was in the forefront. Okay. And when 1998 came, we kind of assumed that having pushed the military out, let's say, that the old traditional leaders who followed for Bafemi Awolowo, who followed the Sardauna of Sokoto, who followed Michael Okpara, would return to politics. But we completely miscalculated. We did not realize that they were so suspect of the military that they didn't think the military was really going to go away. So they stayed back. And when they stayed back, the bag carriers of the soldiers stepped in. That was a huge error. I can tell you about a meeting in my office in 1998, in which there was a big debate on this matter. What should we do? Donald Duke and others said we must go into politics, take up the space. Some others argued we must not. We're civil society. We've done our work as professionals. Let's go back to our jobs. I can take the heat for being the one who cast the deciding vote. And I said, look, we're professionals. Let's go back to work and let politicians now lead our country. We made a fundamental error. And I'm forever guilty on that count. Because when the military fellows stepped into the fray, decided who they wanted to continue, they also ensured that using a captured state, they decided the outcome. Let's stop pussyfooting around. We hosted a meeting, a dinner for President Jimmy Carter, General Colin Powell, and the delegation they brought to that 1999 election. I recall asking President Carter what he thought about the elections. And President Carter couldn't speak. He was tongue-tied. For the first time, I had the privilege of meeting him like 5 times. That day, he couldn't say a word. He was. And then President Sulaiman, former ambassador to Nigeria, pulled me aside and said, Pat, the thing was embarrassing. So they saw soldiers carrying ballot boxes, 1999 elections. A particular example he gave in Nasarawa State, they just drove out of Abuja, and they came to a polling station around noon, and they said, hey, nobody has voted here, nobody's coming. The people in the polling station say, we don't know, they have not agreed, they've not come out. They drove past, went on, came back like an hour and a half later, and every single person registered had voted. And President Carter realized this is America wonder. Anyway, so when I asked him what happened, he didn't know what to say, but after some diplomatic coaching, I suspect, he finally said, later at the dinner, well, it seems that the outcome of elections somehow reflects the wishes of the Nigerian people. That was the diplomatic way of couching the fact that even the 1999 election was, well, questionable in its value. However, the point is that it has gone down progressively since 1999. And so civil society, like Annkio said, must come back out and reclaim the country for the Nigerian people. Right now, the country does not belong to the Nigerian people. We need to make elections work. We need to make it reflect the interest of the Nigerian people. And here's the madness and method business. First and foremost, we need to massively ensure that those Nigerians who have given up on elections register. That's one. And that we ensure that we fight the role of money in politics, that we use technology. And we're going to begin to test this from next month. We're going to get constituency delineations and all those registered in those constituencies. By telephone, we're going to ask them the question, what do you consider leadership attributes? They will tell us. After they tell us, we'll then ask them in another poll, how do you think the people who represent you in this constituency pan out relative to these attributes that you yourselves have told us? If they come back and we suspect that we will find that less than 20% of them will agree that the people representing them really represent them, then we'll ask them to recall those people. And we'll fight with INEC for the rest of the year about why they are not recalling those people. And that's one point. We will litigate every issue. Look, INEC has a critical role in the failure of elections in Nigeria, and we will litigate it. Why do they decide that against the Constitution, this is when registration stops, this is when voting takes place, and how INEC deliberately disenfranchises the Nigerian people? We will engage on those issues until INEC either chooses to be a better institution or all of us accept that we don't have a democracy. This is going to be a year of civil society coming back hard and strong. Our country cannot continue to be a place where professional politicians trade between each other with our destiny. We must stand up, and if we die, we die.
Well, I'll come back to you, Professor Utomi, so that we can talk more. You expatiate more on how the people, I know already you said technology, but let's talk more about how the people can fight against money politics. That brings us to you, Annkio Briggs. Let's start talking about the electoral umpire. Listen to Professor Utomi and listen to some of the key things both of you highlighted. Nigerians have come to a conclusion, and someone said, look, if you felt that your voter card is worthless, why is it that some politician somewhere is ready to pay for it? You don't buy what is worthless. Speak to us on this, Annkio Briggs.
Well, in my opinion and in my observations, starting from the 1999 elections, at least looking at it from where I am and where I have always been and where I will always be, which is the Niger-Delta region, definitely Nigerians as a whole. And the Niger-Delta region, particularly, have come to accept that elections, it doesn't matter whether it's PDP or APC, that elections are rigged. Now, if you compare the type of rigging that was done in 1999 to 2003, 7 onward every 4 years, I think what has happened in 2015, 2019, and what's likely to happen in 2023 is going to beat whatever has happened in terms of rigging of election, hands down. Oh,
there seems to be a glitch on the connection to Ms. Briggs. We hope once that is sorted, we'll come back to you. Let's come back to Professor Utomi here quickly. Professor Utomi, before we went to Annkio Briggs, I hope once she comes back, she should be able to complete her train of thought there. I see you're back. I see you're back.
She's back.
Okay, let's let you, run through.
Like the elections right now, people don't believe that their votes count because it's been very clear that children have been allowed to vote. It's very obvious. And then it's very clear now, it's not a suspicion anymore, that people who are not Nigerians have been allowed to come in at elections and vote openly. And if the manipulation through INEC and in coalition with INEC and politicians who believe that what they say is what's going to happen, have so manipulated the electoral system that we've been so gaslight, and the new word that is now coming up, the seizure of power, whether it's state or whether it is the judiciary, or whether it is the rights of the people to vote. I mean, even people who go out and vote know that the voting will be manipulated. The reason why politicians buy the voters' card is very simply because already the figures have been allocated. And so what they do with buying of the voters' card is very simply to justify the placing of the figures, the ways that they have placed the figures. That's all. So the world knows that elections are rigged in Nigeria. I think if there is a way of doing a research in the world, I think that you will find that Nigeria will be at the top of the list of rigging election. If not, why will the president go through all that we have been through to now and refuse to assent to the bill, and now coming up with excuses why he's not going to do it? So you can see ahead what that is projecting and what that is going to mean.
I've now asked Professor Utomi's comment on that. What's the likelihood? Should that, be swept under the carpet? That is, if the assembly refuses, to go ahead and veto, override the president. What's the implication of that in the coming elections?
I think one of the major feelings of the political class in Nigeria is that they lack the capacity to project the consequences of their action. Look, in 2000, I wrote several articles. You can read them, that they're the newspapers, projecting that the anarchy that we have today in Nigeria was coming. I didn't do it because I was a prophet. I know I don't have that gift. I did it because I was simply analyzing what was available as information. An American called Robert Kaplan had written a book, The Coming Anarchy, which he projected trends of cleavages in our part of the world and suggested that these trends, ethnic, religious, economic cleavages, will converge and result in a descent into anarchy, even as far as projecting that Jos in Nigeria would be the point from which West Africa begins to descend into anarchy. And we are there. The anarchy that was projected is here. What lesson I would like politicians to learn, if they are patriots, if they care for their country, is that not overriding the president's position will result in a faster ride towards that anarchy. Look, we now have loss of faith in the judiciary in Nigeria. We have loss of faith in the police. The state is become so weak. When the people say to themselves, look, we have no hope anymore, even the small hope of using technology to ensure a little more fairness in the election process, they are vetoing it. They don't want it to happen. And the people will begin to rise. Between you and I, my view is that Nigeria will not be around in just a few short years, maybe 2027, if they don't do major retrieval action.
So it's in their hands, in the hands of the representatives.
They are the people who run Nigeria today, representatives, president, governors. They will be around and see Nigeria disintegrate within 5 years. And they are not thinking of it, shows their major limitation. Just any scholarship should be able to show them where they are leading Nigeria towards. But for some reason, because of the small private jet and funny things they get from the system, they just can't seem to see where they're taking us. And it's not hard to project. Several people have written, foreigners, books on this. They think that because they can bamboozle the people and get away with it this time, next time, but they're not seeing the pattern that is emerging, and that this is the end point of that pattern. That's tragic. If they can't see it, then they are much more limited than I think. And so we must, as civil society, rise, because what's at stake is whether our country will be around or not. That's what's at stake. It's as bad, if not worse, than what we fought under military rule.
And that is why it's so important that we keep the conversation going. I must say, Professor Utomi and Annkio Briggs, we'll have both of you again, very soon to talk about a whole lot about nation. But before we wrap up quickly here, let's come to Annkio Briggs. I did say I was going to ask you for an update on developments in the Niger-Delta. I know we're rounding off if we can actually do this. But again, as I said, we'll have another part in this series to talk more and spatiate more on developments. What's the state of cleanup? Because I went into the archives and I saw clips and clips of you talking, addressing people, many years ago. And of course, has anything changed?
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, your gang, borrowing from Pat Utomi's show, your gang and you did a great job when you were at that place. And you addressed the issues. You didn't shy away. You addressed those issues of environment. And I must assure you, sadly, and with tears in my eyes and blood dripping from my heart, that things are worse. If you thought those times that what you saw, what I shared with you, what I showed you physically was bad, I assure you that they are almost 100% worse. Right now, there are other complications to do with people looking for a source of economy, to the extent that the environment is suffering from that. People who really have a right to look for economy are using bad means, terrible means, to destroy further the environment that has been so wickedly devastated. There is environmental genocide in the Niger-Delta, as I used to say in those days, but now I think that our environment, if we're lucky, some of it may be retrieved, but a whole lot of it, believe me, and I come from these areas, is dead. And to think that we have a federal government where people are prepared to box people, like the former president is doing to us, shouting of ownership of oil and gas. And it's not talking about the ownership of the destruction and the pain. Who owns the ownership and the destruction and the killing of our people in suit? Right now, as I speak to you, next time I'm out, I'm going for a checkup, because people who live in River State particularly are now developing cancer of the lungs. People who don't smoke are developing cancer of the people who are doing the bonfire are dying. And yet you have a situation where the federal government and the oil companies are claiming that they are cleaning up Ogoni. Ogoni is just a drop in the ocean, rightly so, but a drop in the Niger-Delta crisis of environmental genocide. We need help. This is a call for help to the international community, because look, the world is going to suffer from this, whether they like it or not, whether it's COP26 or global warming, whatever they call it, they are going to be victims of what is happening.
Well, I'm excited to let you in on something about what News Central, your Pan-African television station, is doing. We actually started something on environment, and the focus is on the cleanup in the Niger-Delta. We'll work with you and your team on that, and we'll ensure that something drastic and positive will be done to the region. Many thanks for being such nice company, Professor Pat Utomi and Annkio Briggs. We'll have both of you again. Thank you for your time. And to our viewers, in whatever you do, regardless of where you are from, choose your country, choose your continent, and work to see its growth. I'm Sulaiman. See you again.